Happening right now, U.S. forces have been hitting Iranian surveillance sites and underground weapon storages on the 7th straight night of escalating strikes against Iran. And it comes as the U.S. maintains its naval blockade against all of those Iranian ports in the Strait of Hormuz. And the continued strikes come at a cost. Lucas Tomlinson is live in Tel Aviv, Israel right now with the very latest. Hi, Lucas.
Good afternoon, Aisha. That's right. The Pentagon says 13 American service members, 10 soldiers, and 3 sailors have been wounded in action this week after continued Iranian attacks on Bahrain and Kuwait and Jordan. And last night in particular, there was a powerful strike on a base in Jordan, Aisha, that houses a bunch of U.S. Air Force fighter squadrons. Here was General Jack Keane earlier.
Can they harass a little bit? Certainly. But we can take down all of their means and all of their ability to control it. And it just takes some time to deal with this.
And for the second straight day, Kuwait said a water desalination and power plant were hit by Iranian drones and missiles. About 90% of Kuwait's drinking water comes from this reverse osmosis process. American airstrikes continued last night, this for the 7th night in a row. They began on July 7th when President Trump was at the NATO summit in Turkey, when Iran hit those 3 oil tankers in the Strait of Hormuz, bringing an end to the ceasefire. Since then, U.S. Air Force F-35s, F-16s, F-15s, and Navy Super Hornets and their stealth fighter jets have been the vanguard of the response, dropping 2,000-pound satellite-guided bombs and standoff missiles, destroying bridges around Bandar Abbas in recent days, Iran's largest naval and commercial port on the Strait of Hormuz. Shipping traffic has slowed to a trickle in the strait in recent days. To highlight how dangerous it is, Aisha, to sail through the strait, U.S. warships have not attempted it in more than 2 months. The U.S. naval blockade returned this week. An Iranian advisor, the supreme leader, we have not seen since his father and most of his family were killed on the first day of the war, warning, quote, if U.S. strikes continue for several more days, we will move into a phase of full-scale offensive operations. So expect more airstrikes tonight in Iran from the U.S. military. There's also dozens of additional aircraft coming in from the U.S. Air Force fighter squadrons, also refueling planes, and also there's been 3 medevac flights carrying the wounded out of the region. Aisha?
Wow. Okay, Lucas Tomlinson with that live report from Tel Aviv. Lucas, thank you very much. For more, let's bring in the Big Weekend Show co-host and Reserve Marine, Joey Jones, a good friend of our show. Joey, great to have you. Happy Saturday.
Yeah, happy Saturday. Obviously not good news this morning. We talk about American troops, American personnel in danger, possibly hit.
Yeah.
Listen, you have someone like General Jack Keane, who's very well respected and has through his private and public service been a huge help to this administration and others. But when you say something like they can harass a little bit, and then you hear that Americans are seriously injured, the messaging and the reality isn't matching up. And I think that's where Americans are with this. They want to understand, what do you mean when you say you've disabled Iran's military, yet they're still directly hitting us? And I think that the Pentagon, the administration, doing the best they can, but they need to do a better job getting out of front of where this is going and what we should expect.
Well, let me follow up on that, because we had some pretty serious strikes in Jordan last night. We're still waiting to see what came out of that. We're hoping for the safety of all of our soldiers in the Middle East right now deployed there for our benefit. How do you think this past week has gone, Joey? We've, increased strikes on a daily basis, nightly basis for the Iranians, 7 days in a row. How do you think this has gone?
I think that there's not much they can do to take our planes out of the sky or to stop us from dropping bombs from overhead. I also think the greatest threat in the Strait of Hormuz, and as we're seeing now, perhaps even further reach, isn't something you take out with dropping a bomb from the sky. And that is the rock and the hard place the president sits in, because I don't think this country has any appetite on either side of the aisle for a boots-on-the-ground invasion of any sort, even if it's just Karg Island or the very shallow water off the coast of Iran. The closer you put a lot of troops into harm's way, the less the American people are going to understand the necessity of it, considering there is an argument that you bring everybody home and they can't get hurt. Now, I don't say that I'm advocating for that, but that is an argument that a regular person walking the street in America right now trying to provide for their family doesn't have enough information to understand what that argument is? Why is it that Iran was so close, that you think they were so close to nuclear weapons in March of this year when we've heard they were in the 11th hour for 20 years? I think the administration's got to put more out for people to understand the urgency of this. Otherwise, that's where the conspiracy theories come in. That's where people start to say, was this just Israel baiting us into that? I don't believe that to be true, but the American people have all the right in the world to be frustrated when you hear that American troops are getting injured again.
Well, I want to follow up on that in a second about, the Israel factor, because that came up with the vice president's podcast appearance earlier this week. But first, I want to play the soundbite from President Trump to our Ed Lawrence about what could come next, whether or not he could take this, escalate this even further to wipe out the IRGC. Let's listen here.
You came to the conclusion that you couldn't negotiate with the IRGC. Does that mean that you might wipe them out like you did ISIS?
Yeah, it does. We will see what's happening. This should have been done by other presidents for many years, for 47 years, but really a lot longer than that, and it wasn't. And I never understood why, but now I do. Because if you're not going to do it the way I'm doing it, you're never going to make a deal with them.
Joey, what do you think that looks like to wipe out the IRGC? Because I think from what I've heard you say so far, not a lot of folks definitely in America want boots on the ground. Doesn't seem that that is going to get rid of the IRGC. How would that happen?
So there's two things to look at here. On one hand, you've got the invasion of Iraq in 2003, right? Within weeks, pretty much, we had, well, at least within months, the entire Iraqi army essentially surrendered, right? It was a conventional army. We took them over, rolled in, and we got that done. Then we fought that war for another 10 years because of what we called an insurgency. Now, was that insurgency some of those same army folks that just put on, as Cat Williams would say, pajamas and went out in the street and started shooting AKs? Or was that, with Al-Qaeda, were that people coming in from all over the world? And then the other side of it is Afghanistan. It wasn't a uniformed army. We went in, we pushed out the Taliban, and now they ruled that country 20 years later. And so if you look at Iran and you say you're going to wipe them out like you did ISIS, do you mean using troops from other countries or other Middle Eastern countries looking at a ground invasion? We provide the logistical support and the overhead support and the intelligence? Or do you mean that we're going to land an ARG, an amphibious ready group on the shore and push in and fight up to 1 million man army when you take in what their version of the National Guard is? And that's the problem. What is it that you need to fight? We have the vice president on with Joe Rogan, and he says very matter-of-factly that there are two, I guess, entities or factions in Iran that they're dealing with. There's the hardliners, the theologically compelled, and then there's what he called the pragmatists.
Yeah, exactly.
And he says
the ones that want to make a
carrots
deal.
and sticks.
Right.
And so what are we doing today? Is it a carrot? Is it a stick? Is it the hardliners? Is it the pragmatists? The frustrations are there. I think they're doing everything they can. But I don't know that this is something that simply a conventional military can solve, and we've learned that over the decades of fighting in that region.
From my understanding, it sounds like they're using both avenues at the same time to try to make a deal, whichever one comes first. You talked about J.D. Vance. Caused quite a stir this week amongst the pro-Israel part of the GOP. I'm going to play the soundbite of J.D. Vance on the Joe Rogan podcast, and then the White House's response to that. Let's watch.
There's a lot of talk about how much is the Israeli government influencing American politics, and there are certainly certain people within the Israeli government who hate the deal, and we see exact evidence. I definitely think you have seen this very discreet, extremely well-funded campaign to try to derail the negotiation and try to derail the deal.
Does the president agree with that statement?
I think the president would certainly agree that, yes, foreign countries certainly do try to persuade American public opinion. There's no doubt about that. I think it's just a basic fact.
Joey, your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, the late Lindsey Graham and Rand Paul were both senators in this country and had equal access to the president and, for that matter, delegates of foreign nations, and they had very different views on how to treat any type of foreign engagement. And so you have to believe the Israeli government has the same thing going on. It's not the responsibility of the Israeli government to do what's best for America. It's their responsibility to do what's best for Israel. However, it is the responsibility of American leaders to see through any lobbying and any type of influence, legitimate or not, from any country or any industry or any group. That is your job as an elected politician, to understand that and always do what's best for the American people. And I think from that perspective, the Trump administration has done a good job. I mean, Israel is not just a close ally. You have hundreds of thousands, if not a million, dual citizens.
Yeah.
So it's not like it's something that is like every other country in the Middle East. There is a connection there that is stronger than most. There are people that live in Israel that also live here, that go back and forth. So you're going to have inherent groups and communities that have a strong allegiance to Israel, that live in this country legitimately and are Americans. That doesn't mean it's malicious or that it's covert or that it's subversive. It means that it's a part of the equation that our president is very keen on, and he has to keep his eye on the ball of what's best for America. And for the most part, I think he's done that as much as one human being can. And he has his team of rivals there in the White House, which is a good thing. It's not a bad thing to have differing views, even within the small circle. But right here we sit today, and there's a lot of frustration, even among myself, about what is it we're trying to do with Iran and how quickly we can do it. Because this restarting negotiations every couple of weeks and then coming and telling us that this MOU is going to save the day, and then we get in a place which feels like it's worse than it was a few weeks ago, the patience runs out, in blood and treasure especially.
Okay. Joey Jones, you got a big